We now go to Bobby Sausalito with his reaction, comedian, political commentator. Bobby, what do you make of this? I mean, doesn't his reaction to everything related to the Clintons kind of tell us everything that we've suspected and have been screaming about for the last several years?
Yes, and Patrick actually said it. He said, your reaction is the answer. And actually, Patrick mentioned that he watched the Wiener documentary earlier before watching the show. So I watched it last night to get more context after I watched the full context. And you can actually see he has nervous tells. And the way he responds in the documentary when he knows that he's lying, he's doing the exact same thing here. He raises his voice, he yells, he acts like it's so crazy that you would even suggest something. And then Patrick actually had another guest on his podcast later in the day yesterday by the name of Dave Smith. And he says, isn't it kind of interesting that Anthony Weiner is reacting this way, like he's somehow holier than thou, because Patrick Bet David is simply asking about why the body count is there, not suggesting that they killed them or that they're necessarily involved with it. And he's like, you've done objectively terrible things. Why are you having this reaction and pretending like you have the high ground when this guy's simply asking a question for a person that's been in their immediate orbit for a majority of their adult life?
Yeah, it's just a question. It shouldn't be that type of response unless he's actually guilty of something. So I don't find it too surprising. But it also, not to mention the fact, he was in jail for sexting a 15-year-old. And so we're just supposed to believe what he says now. I mean, it's totally mental. But Bobby, I know that you kind of broke down the whole thing. You watched the entirety of the interview. Tell us a little bit more about some of the conspiracies tied to this guy. I mean, there's the emails, the hot dogs. Tell us why us tinfoil hat wearers are just right yet again.
Well, I mean, there's a saying where it's like, how you do anything is how you do everything. And it's like the way that this person behaves, and you can see it really clearly in the documentary. It's like the way that he speaks to his wife, the way that he reacts, coming back from this very embarrassing thing and then lying about it again and getting caught up and embroiled in it. It's like this is a pattern of behavior. And then on top of it, his wife, who honestly seems like a very lovely and very nice woman, she was in Hillary Clinton's immediate orbit for the majority of her political career. And this guy so happened to marry into it. There's a lot of very suspect things that have happened around Hillary Clinton and her family. And there's a lot of people that have died as a result of what we would call overseas politics as a result of what they've done. So I just don't know that they have that level of empathy. And this guy was a degree away from it. So I would imagine that he certainly knows a lot more that he's leading on to. And his nervous tells show that I think that he actually does.
Yeah, it's definitely suspicious to say the least. And I'm actually shocked that he agreed to go on the show with Patrick Bet David. So it's definitely an interesting one. I want to watch the rest of it. Yeah, yeah, very true.
Yeah.
All right, Bobby, in other news, Republican presidential candidate Ron DeSantis just announced he's launching a state inquiry into Anheuser-Busch over their poor stock performance and promotion of gender ideology following the Dylan Mulvaney controversy. Now, I think this is great news and absolutely what needs to be done here, but how do you feel about it, Bobby? What do you see this leading to?
Well, the initial reaction of people, which I kind of saw on Twitter, is they're saying, it's bad for somebody to use politics as a reason to weaponize against a corporation. And I agree with that. But if you actually read the text of the document and what they're actually trying to say, it's kind of like what most things say about Ron DeSantis. It certainly appears bad. It's framed that way. But when you actually read it, you understand. What he's talking about is how the Small Business Administration and a lot of federal dollars and dollars that are in the pension plans of police officers, fire department, and government workers are invested in Anheuser-Busch. So the inquisition is basically to determine whether or not they broke some type of fiduciary duty by making such objectively poor decisions that were bound to negatively affect their stock price. This is not necessarily being weaponized. It's just an inquisition, and there's a lot of money at stake. And it's not federal money. It's American citizens' money, taxpayers' money that they usually don't have the ability to choose where it gets invested. So I'm for it. But at initial look, I can understand why people think it looks bad. But I wish people would read more into things before they jump to conclusions. It's like a lie travels halfway around the world before the truth wakes up.
That's very solid advice. I think both ends of the political spectrum could heed that advice, because it happens all the time, and we need to be clear when we are discussing these important matters. But speaking of inquiries, I think one needs to be launched into whatever the heck this is, because I don't even know. Let's take a look.
That was terrible! That was the worst tweet I've ever seen! You pay $1 million to hit like that? Are you kidding me?
No! Shut it down! Shut it down!
We need clean air!
So this is the latest from the climate commies. I mean, this is what they've literally resorted to now, harassing private club members for trying to enjoy a game of golf. I mean, do these idiots not understand that the rich people are the ones that make the jobs? This organization, Planet Over Profit, claims the 1% is robbing them of having a livable future. Bobby, is there any truth to this?
No, and I mean, this is fatherless activities. Let's be honest. It's very sad inside SSRI's type behavior.
Yeah.
Look, they want attention, which is why it's like a lot of these crazy TikToks you see of people saying like, I'm a cat, call me frog, frog self. This is an attention-seeking event. This has absolutely nothing to do with the climate. It has absolutely nothing to do with instituting any actual meaningful change. They're simply there to get attention. These guys are doing the least climate involved thing you could possibly do. They're hitting a ball outside and using an electric cart to follow the ball. I bet you every single one of those people drove a gas-powered vehicle to get up to the golf course so that they could scream about that. It just goes to show that it's kind of like Occupy Wall Street. It's like Occupy Wall Street should have been Occupy Washington, D.C. It should have been Occupy Pennsylvania Avenue. It should have been Occupy Congress. They have misguided understanding of who's actually really causing the problem. But it's a perfect example of people being so uninformed but easily emotionally manipulated by people that say, go do this and it will cause some real change. When in actuality, it does absolutely nothing at all, but it satisfies their need for attention.
Yes, you're right. It is the most selfish act I think I've seen to date. I saw a video earlier today of a whole line of the Just Stop Oil people spreading across a line of cars, and one of the ladies was literally giving birth, trying to rush to a hospital, and these people would not let her through. I mean, it's just reached new levels of insanity, and I don't know what. We have to put an end to it immediately, Bobby. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for all that you do. Where can people find you and follow you for more?
Followbobby.com and takenaps on Instagram.
Thanks so much, Bobby. Take care.